The silver and black are getting absolutely ambushed by the NFL scheduling committee, and it is time to expose the massive competitive disadvantage being forced onto this roster. If you think the path to the postseason was going to be a straightforward gridiron battle, you need to wake up and look at the hidden landmines buried in this 2026 calendar. Are we truly being set up for failure by the league offices, or is this the ultimate test to prove this franchise has the depth to survive a brutal war of attrition? Before we dive deep into the analytical breakdown of this scheduling nightmare, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now to stay locked into the most passionate, raw, and unfiltered fan community on the web. When the official schedule drops, the average fan looks at the team names, circles the primetime games, and guesses the record based on superficial matchups. But if you dig underneath the surface and look at the structural mechanics of how these games are spaced out, a terrifying picture begins to emerge. The first major red flag that should have every single member of the fan base slamming their fists on the table is the concept of net rest edge. For the uninitiated, net rest edge is the metric that tracks the total cumulative days of extra rest a football team has compared to its direct opponents over the full stretch of a 17-game season. It sounds like a minor detail on paper, but when you are dealing with elite athletes colliding at high speeds week after week, a single extra day of recovery can be the difference between an explosive third down conversion and a devastating muscle pull. To put it simply, if a divisional rival enjoys a full 7-day bye week to heal up and scheme before facing us, while we are forced to travel back from a brutal Monday night slugfest on a short week, that rival walks onto the field with a massive +8 rest advantage. Conversely, our guys are staring down a punishing -8 disadvantage before the ball is even teed up. When you tally up those discrepancies over the entire year, you get the net rest edge, and the league has handed us a pathetic -3.5 rest days for the 2026 campaign. Now, some casual observers might look at a -3.5 and think it is not the end of the world, but you have to look at the historical context and the agonizing pattern of disrespect. Just 1 year ago, this franchise was buried dead last in the entire league with an unprecedented, astronomical -19 net rest edge. That means for 2 consecutive seasons, the league office has condemned the silver and black to the bottom 3 of the league in terms of rest and recovery. It is a back-to-back scheduling assault that actively punishes physical recovery. When a team is constantly shortchanged on rest, the organizational depth is tested to its absolute limits. If you have a top-heavy roster with glaring holes in the second and third strings, a negative rest edge will systematically dismantle your season by the time November rolls around. We have spent years watching previous front offices struggle to build a competent, deep roster, turning the lower half of the depth chart into a revolving door of waiver wire pickups. While the current regime has made massive strides in establishing real, functional depth, forcing a team to fight uphill against the rest clock for 2 straight years feels less like a random mathematical coincidence and more like an intentional handicap. To understand just how lopsided this distribution of rest truly is, you only have to look at how the rest of the league is being pampered. The Chicago Bears are sitting at the absolute top of the mountain, laughing all the way to a spectacular +15 net rest edge. They are essentially getting a luxurious, extended vacation spread throughout their season while our players are forced to live in the training room just to survive. Even when you narrow the scope to our immediate backyard in the AFC West, the disparity is infuriating. The Denver Broncos are sitting pretty with a +3 rest edge, giving them the best recovery calendar in the entire division. The Kansas City Chiefs are sitting at a minor -1.5, which is practically an afterthought for a team that already receives every whistle and favorable call in existence. The only minor solace we can find in the entire league is looking over at the Los Angeles Chargers, who have been completely obliterated with a mind-boggling -24 net rest edge. It is the single worst scheduling disadvantage recorded in modern football history, meaning the Chargers are essentially playing the season on one leg. While it is comforting to know a divisional foe is suffering an even worse fate, it does not excuse the fact that our path to a division title has been made artificially steeper. Does a positive rest edge actually guarantee success on the football field, or can pure passion and elite coaching overcome a broken calendar? The analytical data from previous seasons tells a definitive, undeniable story. Look at the teams who enjoyed a rest edge greater than +7 days recently. The defending Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks rode that wave of physical freshness all the way to a dominant 14-win season. The Los Angeles Rams utilized their extra recovery time to lock up 12 victories, and the San Francisco 49ers mirrored that exact same 12-win success. The Detroit Lions parlayed their rest advantages into 9 wins, and even a heavily flawed Miami Dolphins roster managed to scratch out 7 victories that they probably had no business winning based on pure talent alone. Fresh legs create explosive plays in the fourth quarter, and extra days in the film room allow coaching staffs to install highly specific, lethal game plans. Now, look at the catastrophic flip side of that coin. Look at the teams who were cursed with a -7 or worse net rest edge. Our beloved Las Vegas franchise was dragged down to a heartbreaking 3-win season under the weight of physical exhaustion. The Washington Commanders suffered a historic, monumental drop-off, falling from the absolute grace of an NFC Championship game appearance down to the basement of the league. The New Orleans Saints could only muster 6 wins under similar conditions. The historical precedent is written in stone: when the league starves you of rest, your win total plummets. But the scheduling conspiracy does not stop at the net rest metrics. The NFL managed to find another way to tilt the scales by loading up our calendar with opponents coming directly off their bye weeks. When you look at the raw data for the 2026 season, we are tied for the 3rd most difficult slot in the entire league in this category. Only the Philadelphia Eagles and the heavily compromised Chargers play more games against opponents who have had an entire extra week to rest, heal, and prepare specifically for them. On 3 separate occasions this year, our players will look across the line of scrimmage at an opposing squad that has not played a football game in 14 days. Think about the strategic nightmare that creates. In a modern league where the talent gap between rosters is razor thin, and where any given Sunday can produce a shocking upset, giving an opponent a massive preparation advantage is devastating. It means 3 times this year, our coaching staff will have to decipher a game plan that has been marinating in a rival's facility for 2 weeks, while our players are nursing bruises from the previous Sunday. For a franchise trying to climb out of a 3-win hole, we desperately need the league to grant us competitive advantages, not anchor us down with structural obstacles. When you look at the traditional, overall strength of schedule, it initially appears to be the least threatening element of the puzzle. Traditional strength of schedule is a deeply flawed metric because it is traditionally calculated by simply adding up the win-loss records of your opponents from the previous calendar year. It fails to account for roster turnover, blockbuster trades, draft acquisitions, or coaching changes. However, when advanced analysts recalculate the strength of schedule using forward-looking analytics, expected point differentials, and roster grading, the reality becomes grim. Our calendar is painted heavily in warning red, signifying an incredibly dense concentration of elite opponents. We are burdened with the 14th most difficult schedule in the entire National Football League. When your absolute best-case metric is still sitting comfortably in the top half of the toughest schedules in the league, you know you are staring down the barrel of a grueling, unforgiving winter. Now for the absolute ultimate insult. The final piece of data that cements this schedule as an absolute gauntlet is the defensive matchup matrix. Out of all 32 franchises competing in the league, the Philadelphia Eagles have been handed the absolute easiest slate of opposing defenses, giving their offense a clear runway to put up massive point totals. We, on the other hand, have been handed the absolute most difficult defensive matchup schedule in the entire league. Every single week, our offense will be forced to line up against the most physical, disciplined, and elite defensive units football has to offer. This brings us to our official question of the day, and I want every single one of you to be completely honest in the comments section below. Based on this brutal combination of a negative rest edge, 3 post-bye opponents, and the absolute toughest defensive schedule in the league, how many realistic games do you think this team will win in 2026, and has this data officially lowered your expectations? This defensive gauntlet is uniquely terrifying because of where this franchise currently stands in its offensive evolution. We are rolling into the season with a brand new offensive coordinator in Clint Kubak, who is trying to implement a completely new philosophy, a new language, and a run-first zone scheme that requires immense cohesion and timing. To make matters even more complicated, we have an ongoing, high-stakes quarterback battle taking place. Whether it is the young, high-upside gunslinger Fernando Mendoza taking the reins of the offense, or the veteran presence of Kirk Cousins executing the game plan, this passing attack will be forced to undergo its growing pains against elite defensive coordinators who eat young offenses for breakfast. A Kubak-style offense requires establishing the line of scrimmage, setting up play action, and grinding out tough yards. But when you are facing a top-tier defense every single week, those rushing lanes disappear rapidly, forcing a developing quarterback to make high-pressure throws on 3rd and long. It is a trial by fire of the highest magnitude. Let us summarize the sheer weight of what this roster is up against in 2026, the 14th most difficult overall schedule, a bottom 3 net rest disadvantage at -3.5, 3 separate games against rested teams coming off a bye, and the number 1 toughest slate of opposing defenses in professional football. It is an absolute mountain of adversity. When I initially sat down to do a game-by-game record prediction based on pure roster talent, I confidently envisioned a ceiling of 10 wins and a potential wildcard berth. But once you factor in the physical toll of the rest deficits and the caliber of the defensive fronts we face, you realize that every single victory is going to require a monumental effort. The schedule can be broken down into distinct, terrifying chapters. The real defining stretch of the season, the absolute crucible that will determine whether this team punches a ticket to the postseason or plummets into a top 5 draft pick, takes place between Week 4 and Week 8. That stretch is an absolute, unadulterated gauntlet. We are forced to line up against the powerhouse Kansas City Chiefs, followed immediately by a physical battle against the New England Patriots, a high-flying matchup against the Buffalo Bills, and a grueling game against the physical Los Angeles Rams. There is zero room to breathe, zero margin for error, and a single bad game can trigger a multi-week slide. Even if we manage to split that stretch and keep our heads above water, the late-season slate offers no reprieve. Coming out of the later months, we are forced to stare down the San Francisco 49ers, the relentless Seattle Seahawks, and a dangerous Denver Broncos squad. The only saving grace, the single silver lining in this entire analytical nightmare, is the placement of our late season bye week. If this coaching staff can implement a brilliant rotation policy early in the year, utilize our newly found depth to protect our star players, and keep this roster relatively healthy through the initial waves of the season, that late bye week will be an absolute clutch lifeline. It will allow our squad to heal up, reset the schematics, and get fresh for the final, crucial stretch of the year, which features 3 high-stakes AFC West divisional matchups to close out the 2026 regular season. We know what we are up against. The league offices can stack the deck, they can strip away our rest days, and they can line up the best defenses in the world to stand in our way, but they can never strip away the heart, the grit, and the relentless fighting spirit of the silver and black.